2 of Chapter 19 notes. We left off with the Sumner Brooks battle on the Senate floor. Now let's look for the election of 1856 through Dred Scott. And so the election of 1856, where the Republican Party is going to launch itself onto the national scene with its first presidential candidate. The Democrats, on the other hand, nominate Flabby Buchanan. Flabby, Stephen Douglas referred to him just because his weak grasp on political theory, but they nominate Buchanan. He's amiable but mediocre, and after 17 ballots trying to get a majority, they finally get Buchanan over Pierce and Douglas. Pierce, now not going to be renominated, says, hey, there's nothing left to do but get drunk. And he does. Buchanan's chief qualification, that he didn't take a stand on Kansas-Nebraska Act. So he didn't tick off one side or the other. And finally, label him as a pro-Southern candidate. So now, who do the Republicans nominate? None other than John C. Fremont, hero of Mexican-American War in California, declared the Bear Flag Republic for a couple of weeks. Quote, had every qualification of genius except talent. So he was a born leader. He was a great leader, great spokesperson. Just, he wasn't gifted enough to be president. So now let's take a look at some factions here. The Southern Fire Eaters threatened secession as Fremont elected. Remember, balance of power is already thrown. The Senate is owned by the North. The House owned by the North. As long as the presidency stays with the South, it's not totally tipped. So if Fremont's elected, game over. Republicans elected, we're leaving. You don't believe them? I'll just look 4 years ahead. John Bott, Virginia Whig, called the secession an idle threat. That's idle. You're not gonna. Local newspaper advises him to leave the state lest he, quote, provoke the dishonor of lynching. Whoa, talk about violence. I guess he'd get thrown off of Twitter, huh? Republican campaign. They campaign on the slogan, free speech, free soil, Fremont. So notice, they're not going after Southern slavery. That's in the Constitution. So we got to put up with that. Just don't want to spread slavery. So their platform called for the halt to the extension of slavery. Republicans make an impressive showing for a 2-year-old party, yet only 1,200 people in slaveholding states vote for him. Can you say sectionalism? I know you can. We are now seeing a clear division between North and South. No national party now. Uh-oh. Millard Fillmore. What do you know about Millard Fillmore? All right, so let's take a look at back to Millard Fillmore and the death of the know-nothings. But first, get ready for your Ed Puzzle questions. First, who is the Chief Justice in the Dred Scott case? That's right. Not one of our best. Dred Scott versus... And if you're saying, hey, it's spelled wrong, you're right. The Supreme Court misspelled it, but what you're looking at right now is the actual correct spelling of Mr. Sanford. All right, so the election of 56, let's look at the Dred Scott case. This is the land of 5, so I want to show you a quick little intro video to give you a heads up on the case.
Have you ever been a slave and wanted to be free because you once lived in free territory? Let me tell you about Dred Scott's situation, an enslaved man living in the U.S. nation. Dred's master took him all over the country, to states with slaves and to some that were free. He lived for 2 years in free Illinois till his owner Emerson was redeployed. In Wisconsin, Dred met Harriet his love and got married not in court but in the eyes of God above. Emerson got married but soon he died and ownership passed to his widowed bride. Dred asked her to manumit him but she refused. He said, "Here's $300." She said, "You're too much to lose." He took a case to court. They said the Scots should be free because they used to live in the free territory. The Supreme Court then reversed the ruling that had been made. They said, "You're not a man, you're only just a slave." Come on, I'm not even going for that. This is what I'm gonna sing. You know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave. Oh, Janie, you know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave. Supreme Court, you know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave. So Dred lost his court case, was denied his freedom, and that's a shame. But why you have to heed him? Because a verdict, it changed the game and drove abolitionists insane. Traveled to the free states, no more made you free, and perhaps the free states had no right to be. The Supreme Court said that Congress had no right to restrict slavery in territories. In case you don't know what this implies, remember Missouri Compromise. It now violated the Constitution. Now slavery could go up north and now it could spread. Chief Justice Taney spoke of rights for Dred. Oh, snap! Guess what he said? No rights which the white man was bound to respect. Blacks have no rights, they're not citizens. So this has to be the worst decision made when they told poor Dred Scott, "You're only just a slave." Don't give me that. Don't even give me that. I'll bust this. You know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave. Oh, Janie, you know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave. Supreme Court, you know he should be free, but you say he's just a slave. But you say he's just a slave.
Okay. So the Dred Scott case, 2 days after inauguration, originally filed in 47, it took a long time to finally get to the court date, 10 years. Buchanan calls on the nation to abide whatever the decision is. He had been previously told what the decision would be. They kind of gave him a heads up. Now, it is difficult to overstate the impact of the decision on the North. How it impressed the psyche that they could spread it up north. I just can't overstate it. So if you're going to have SFI of cause of the Civil War, God bless you. Your essay will fail if Dred Scott's not on it. So let's look at some background. The video showed it in a unique way. Been shuffled from one family to the other, one's northern state to another, and eventually some abolitionists see him as a perfect test case. They look for the perfect person with the perfect background to work this case in the court. They do the same thing with Rosa Parks. She's the perfect person to bring to the court case. NAACP looks for the perfect test case. Their contention was that he had lived in a free state, thus he is free. Now, there's legal basis for this contention since precedent said otherwise. So there are three. How many? Three. How many? Three. Three major points we need to get out of this case. The court made it unnecessarily political. They had the hubris to think that they would be able to solve the whole slavery problem with one fell swoop. All right, question number 16. Which amendment declares all freed slave citizens? All right, 13th, they're free. 14th, citizens. 15th can vote. That's a very simplistic way to put it, but know that at least. All right, so what are the three major points? Take a look at them. 1, were those slaves citizens? 2, does residence in a free state make a slave free? 3, does residence north of Missouri Compromise line emancipate the slaves? So those are the three big questions. Citizenship. Can you move to a free state and be free? Or once you're a slave, always a slave? And if you live north of the Missouri Compromise line, are you free? Because that's what the law said, kind of. All right, so let's look at, were black citizens under the meaning of the Constitution? First, for more than a century, they were considered, quote, beings of an inferior order with no rights any white man was bound to respect, as you heard him say in that video. So, were they citizens? Thus, in a legal sense, they were property and can't become citizens. So, they're like a car. Wow. So, really, they should have shut down the suit right here. This is where the Supreme Court says you have no standing in the court, thus decision over. And they knew that. But they wanted to solve this question. Again, they thought, there comes the Supreme Court to the rescue. Boy, did they screw up. All right, does residence in a free state make a slave free? There's the second question. As previously decided, the laws of the state in which you reside apply. The suit is brought in Missouri, which is a slave state. Since Dred Scott is the resident of Missouri, the laws of that slave state apply, and thus he's a slave. So he was considered a legal resident, become a slave. Once a slave, always a slave. And the third question to answer, does residence north of 3630 emancipate slave states? Slaves are property under the meaning of Constitution according to the court, Taney Court. Property can't be taken away without due process. The government can't take your house without due process. So, saying Congress didn't have the authority to ban slavery in Missouri Compromise. It would be like taking away property. Thus, the Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional. Now, another interesting Supreme Court side note here is that this is the first court case that used judicial review since the original Marbury versus Madison. So here they were overturning a congressional law for the second time ever, saying basically Missouri Compromise is unconstitutional. So wait a second. Can you have popular sovereignty anymore? Wow. I mean, the ramifications of this court case. So a vote is not due process to take somebody's property. Therefore, people within a territory may not outlaw slavery. Oh my God, the North says they can spread slavery everywhere. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. So I love this. If you can memorize this for an essay, it's outstanding. Dred Scott sanctions the doctrine that slavery is national and freedom is sectional. God, is that a great term? Slavery is national and freedom is sectional. Whoa. Thus, Dred Scott further emotionalizes the issue and reinforces the Northern view of a slave conspiracy. Okay? So there's Dred Scott. So now let's get all the way up to election of 1860 and Fort Sumter. The Panic of 1857, one of the worst depressions. It was a mild slowdown, more damaging to the North than the South. The South are farmers, they more long-term. The North of manufacturing, unemployment, bam. So what are the causes? First, over speculation. This means people are buying low, hoping the price goes high. They keep buying and buying and buying. Prices go up. Woohoo! People keep buying, and then all of a sudden nobody is buying up theirs when they want to sell. Drying up of agricultural markets following the Crimean War. So Europe was buying up all our agricultural goods. So you're planting more, and then the war's over and nobody wants it anymore. And you got tons of it. What happens to the price? With California gold, you get major inflation. You add a whole bunch of money to the equation, all of a sudden things start costing more. This is all significant because results in finger pointing. The South claims that it demonstrated the superiority of their economic and social system. The panic didn't hurt us that much. You guys are to blame. So I would have at my ready for the AP exam these major economic downturns. And you can see here the Panic of 1857 is one of them. 17 through 19, are you ready? What do you know? Panics occurred in all these years, except for 1898. Question number 18, the little giant was a senator from which state? I guess you got to know who the little giant is. And that would be Stephen Douglas from Illinois, along with Honest Abe, who is also for Illinois. Both of them run against each other in 1858 for senator. And question number 19. Whoops. Okay, guess you knew that one. All right. Now, some of the most enlightening debates in American history are the Lincoln-Douglas debates. It's wild to see two men lock horns cerebrally, instead of the crap debates we see today where everybody tries to get some soundbite. So even today when you go to debate club, they have certain format called the Lincoln-Douglas debates. This is for the Illinois Senate seat in 58. So, what were each political stance? And yes, that's exactly their height. You got the little giant, he's 5 foot, like hardly. And you got Honest Abe, who's over 6 foot. I think he's like 6'3" or something. So the little giant is Mr. Popular Sovereignty, where Honest Abe says there's a right and wrong and slavery's wrong. Now, he's not going against slavery in the South because it's in the Constitution, but he certainly is a free soiler at least. So let's take a look at the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Lincoln opposed the extension of slavery and leave it alone where it was already. Just didn't want to make it worse. He didn't believe the federal government could ban it where it existed by law. He might have wanted to, but by law, you can't do it. He respects that. He does not support equality. Quote, I'll not know, nor have I ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. Now, of course, you always got to take this with a grain of salt because he's a politician. And coming out hardcore for one side would end any national political career. He understands the crisis and the proportions of the slavery debate. This very famous speech called the House Divided speech, here's a quote from it. Pay very close attention. You may see this again. Hint, hint, hint. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. So here he's saying that if you're half slave, half free, the country will fall apart. But I do not expect the union to be dissolved. So if we stay half slave, half free, we fall apart. But I don't expect us to fall apart. But I do expect it will cease to be divided. So he's saying it's going to either have to be all slave or all free. I wonder which one he's rooting for. And the Southerners can read between the lines here. this very famous speech during his Lincoln-Douglas debate circuit around Illinois would come back to haunt him in the 1860 election in the South. Now, he does move to a moral position. Quote, the Republican Party thinks slavery is wrong. We think it a moral, social, and political wrong. You got to love Lincoln, how he speaks. Man, it's so simple. Anybody can understand it, and it's very clear. Douglas, he's more of a politician. He's going to be trying to straddle the fence. He wants to get northern votes and southern votes when he goes for president. But while in Illinois, he has to overcome the problem of the effect of the Dred Scott case on popular sovereignty. Remember, Dred Scott says, no, popular sovereignty is a no-go. Lincoln calls his argument on popular sovereignty, the argument was as thin as soup made from the shadow of a pigeon, which had starved to death. That's a lie. This guy, man, I would have wished I could have known that guy. Now, what caused people not to trust Stephen Douglas was building that transcontinental railroad. You read about it already. His wife had lands that the transcontinental railroad was going to go through, and he made sure that his lands were gone through. Big time financial gain for him. Looked a little shady, and he's not going to be able to get rid of that shade over his reputation. His Freeport doctrine to get around that popular sovereignty problem was this. And this is what Lincoln was talking about, the thin soup. Dred Scott said slavery cannot be excluded from territories. In Freeport, people can pass laws. They can say in their own locality, no slaves. Thus, people can exclude. I mean, his argument is real thin. But this is called the Freeport Doctrine. Slavery cannot exist a day or an hour anywhere unless it is supported by local police regulations. So he's putting it on the local government to try to straddle that fence. Popular sovereignty, baby. Therefore, if people don't want slavery, don't enact slave codes. The problem for Douglas, by straddling the fence, he's alienating both the North and the South. Gentlemen, we all know the problem when you try to straddle a fence, just like this young gentleman has. Southerners dislike popular sovereignty and failure to take a strong stand on extended slavery. Southerners feel betrayed because he did not support the Lecompton Constitution. Remember that pro-slavery Kansas Constitution? Southerners dislike the implications of the Freeport Doctrine. On the other hand, the Northerners feel betrayed by the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and Northerners dislike his refusal to take a free soil stance. So frankly, both sides hate him. He's trying to straddle the fence. Bad news. All right, he actually does win, though, the Illinois Senate seat, but it will hurt him in the presidential election 2 years later. Question 20. Now, you didn't have to forbid slave importation at this time, but yet Congress does. What does that indicate about slavery in 1808? Unfortunately, along comes the cotton gin. So African slave trade, growing cries from the South to reopen the slave trade as more territories become available. Hey, we need more slaves, more cotton. U.S. was lax in enforcing the ban. In 43 to 57, U.S. Navy halts 19 slavers. 6 are condemned. That's 31%. So in that, 14-year period? Same 14-year period, Britain halted 600 slavers. We halted 19. They halted 600. And condemned 562. That's 93% condemned. So wait a second. What's going on? Obviously, SFI proving lax enforcing ban. Estimated 400,000 slaves are exported from Africa from 1840 to 47 to Cuba, Brazil, and the United States. Slavers outfitted in New York make a 60% profit. Grocery stores hope to make a 5% profit. Convenience stores hope to make a 28% profit. 60% profit is awesome. It's a big, big carrot on a stick. Total import of the U.S. during the 1850s probably runs to 5 figures. Some say it was higher than when the slave trade was actually legal. There are open advertisements in Southern newspapers for fresh slave imports. One reason Southern elite sought to reopen the slave trade was to gain support of middle-class Southerners who could not afford slaves. So let's take a look at the justification. You can see most of the slaves did go to South and Central America and the islands, of course, but here they are coming here also. So, you want emotionalization. John Brown isn't done yet. John Brown tries to start a slave revolt by gaining a federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry. Oh, crud. And we're going to end that on that note. We're going to end at Harper's Ferry and pick up part 3 of Chapter 19 Notes at Harper's Ferry and John Brown.